We start this lunchtime with the latest development in the police data breach in Northern Ireland. Sinn Fein has said it will not be intimidated after a document was posted outside its offices in Belfast with the names and addresses of police officers redacted. A threatening message directed at MLA Gerry Kelly, who sits on the policing board, was also included. Responding to the threat, this is what he said. This is a very obvious attempt by dissident Republicans to intimidate me. Even more sinister, this is a very public indication that the dissidents do have access to the sensitive information in the data leak document. It therefore represents a very real threat to the officers and the civilian staff involved. I have, of course, reported this incident to the PSNI, and I would appeal to anyone with information to bring that information forward. Well, let's speak to Sky's Matthew Thompson, who's been following this story. Hello to you, Matthew. So the PSNI have responded. What have they said?
Well, look, I think the first thing to say is that this really confirms, in many ways, the worst fears of everybody who has been caught up in this unprecedented data leak. Just last week, Sky News spoke to the wife of one serving officer who said that her terror was apparent at knowing that it was possible these people had access to her information. This is really the strongest suggestion yet that it wasn't a bluff, and that dissident Republicans may well now be in possession of essentially the identities of every single serving PSNI officer and staff. And I do think it's worth explaining exactly why that is such a problem for those who perhaps aren't steeped in this stuff. But dissident Republicans do regard serving officers as legitimate targets. In the Troubles themselves, more than 300 police officers were killed, and many of those were off duty at the time. And to this day, many officers wake up, they have breakfast, and the first thing they do after that is check their car for potential bombs. And the attempted murder of DCI John Caldwell in February underlines how real the threat is. So the PSNI have clearly been alerted to this. Sinn Fein alerted them this morning, and we've asked them for a statement. The PSNI told us from the outset we've been planning for this potential development. That plan is now being put into place. We recognise, they say, the impact this may have on our officers, staff and their families. And additional security and reassurance patrols have already been implemented across Northern Ireland as part of our organisational response. The safety and welfare of our officers and staff remains our priority, and we have reminded them of their personal safety and security both on and off duty. Now, also alluded to in that Sinn Féin statement, there was a threat made against Gerry Kelly, Sinn Féin MLA, who sits on the policing board. We don't know exactly what that threat was, but obviously also for these dissident Republicans, the very fact of a Sinn Féin representative sitting on the policing board would be in some way complicity in the British occupation, if you want to call it that, of Ireland. And so that's why he would be a target, potentially, at least for intimidation. But Sinn Féin being very clear this morning that they will not submit to intimidation, and they've called the dissident Republicans people without support who have to make these threats for relevance, and told them that they should, frankly, at this point, disband and go away.
OK, Matthew, thank you so much for that. Obviously something that we are going to keep across here on Sky News. Matthew, thanks.